Yet another great guest today. The great, as I say, I'm using that word quite a bit, but I'll use it with absolute intent. The great Dave Rubin in here from Rubin Report. Of course, his book, Don't Burn This Book, Thinking for Yourself in an Age of Unreason. You can follow Dave on X. There's that book. Rubin Report, Rumble, Rubin Report, and Locals, Rubin Report. And Locals was, and Rumble was the brainchild of Dave Rubin. And he has very kindly had me on his show, and he's been systematically breaking me down to try to get me to move to Florida. So we'll see if that ever happens. You can blame him if it does. In the meantime, we're going to get right to Dave Rubin after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
You could spend thousands of dollars and dozens of hours trying to look a few years younger, or you can skip all that and the hassle and go with what works, Genucel Skincare. Genucel is the secret to better skin. Their products are made in the USA using a proprietary technology that combines a naturally effective base with non-GMO ingredients. In fact, you might have witnessed the astonishing effects of Genucel during a recent unplanned moment of our show, when just a little Genucel XV restored my skin within minutes right before your eyes. That is how fast these products work.
I know I'm a snob about the products I use on my face. Everybody knows it. Every time I go to the dermatologist's office, they're just rows and rows of different creams. Retinols, vitamin C cream, under eye cream, night creams.
Scrubs.
And then when I get to the counter, they're overpriced. All kinds of products that you can all find at Genucel.com.
Susan and I love Genucel so much, we've created our own bundle so you can try our favorite anti-wrinkle creams, correcting serums, under-eye treatments. Say goodbye to those fine lines, forehead wrinkles, skin redness, even those dark under-eye bags. Women and men of all skin types, Genucel has got you covered. Order right now at Genucel.com/Drew to save 50%, actually over 50%, and you'll get a free luxury spa box plus free shipping. That is Genucel.com/Drew, GENUCEL.com/DREW. After we speak to our friend Dave Rubin, we're going to welcome Karen Kingsbury here. What's wrong with me today? She has written a book that's being turned to a movie, has been turned to a movie. The book is called Someone Like You. She's a very popular author, and we'll be talking to her in about an hour. But right now, the host of the Rubin Report, author of Don't Burn This Book, Thinking for Yourself in an Age of Unreason. Get him at X and Rumble, and as well as Locals. It's all Rubin Report, RUBIN Report. Welcome, Dave Rubin.
Drew, it's good to be with you, my friend. I am in a very rainy South Florida right now, which everyone knows I'm always trying to get you to come move out of Cali. I know you like it over there with the communists and the filth and the homeless and all that stuff. But I just want you to know it's raining today. So although it is beautiful and perfect every day, there is a bit of rain, and it's actually quite refreshing, to be honest with you.
I was going to say, first of all, boo-hoo. I've seen the quality of life you guys have there. If a little water comes out of the sky, it's hard for me to be too upset about that for you. But hey, look, we've got Steve Garvey coming to the Senate for us here in California, so everything's going to be fine. So I think people who unfortunately believe that to be so don't really understand how California politics work. Maybe you could sort of educate them a little bit.
Well, California politics don't work. I mean, they work to the extent that everything is sort of wrong in terms of how it should work. So I guess if that's working, then I guess they're working. But in terms of a functional state where, you know, you're going to be arrested, say if you walk into Lululemon and steal $800 worth of sweatpants, or if you go into Best Buy and steal $900 worth of TVs, or where there's not going to be filth on the street or homeless encampments everywhere and all those things. That's unfortunately what you guys have in California, and what a one-party state, particularly if that one party is the Democrat Party, will bring. And there's evidence of it, of course, not only in California, but also, unfortunately, what's happened to New York, where I'm from. And if you go to Chicago, Illinois, obviously all of these places, particularly blue cities where there's pack concentration, it's usually much worse, but it's the states as a whole, on top of the financial part of it, which is they're just taxing the high hell out of you. And Drew, you were here in my house, in my studio just a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, we got roads down here in Florida. We actually have a much better education system in Florida now than in California, and we don't have income tax. So how is it that the government manages to provide all of the services, do it in a much better fashion? As you know, we've also brought the best policemen down here because New York, NYPD, which used to have the best police in the world, so many of them have fled because first with de Blasio and now with Eric Adams, they weren't getting the backing of the administration. They just don't want to be part of that calamity anymore. So DeSantis started offering $5,000 bonuses to get the best police officers down here. So what's happening really in the country right now is the divergence between where things work and don't is becoming really, really wide. And the question always, or I think the question going forward, let's say, is what do we do about that divergence? Because it's called the United States of America, but at some point, what makes us united? That's what we're going to have to figure out.
Well, there's a lot packed into that, right? I think, for one thing, people have lost track of the fact that the federalism of the United States was really just designed to create a more perfect, well, literally a more perfect union, but just an ongoing relationship that is peaceable and
Yes.
sort of somehow made to be equitable in some sense amongst the states. But it really is not to be under the iron hand of a federal government. So the idea of there being a huge difference amongst the states, we were sort of designed that way. I know it's hard to watch, but it may be actually our strength.
No, I actually do believe it is our strength, and I'm glad you brought that up because most people frame this in, oh my God, we're going to have a civil war or some, there's a lot of stuff bubbling around that idea online right now. And actually what's happening is that the system is working as it was set up to be. Most of the laws that you live under, most of the conditions that you should live under should be the decisions that are made by your state. The federal government's not supposed to do that much. It's supposed to control the borders of the entire country. We're supposed to have some level of foreign policy, which has gone completely insane. We're supposed to have some level of monetary policy, but the federal government shouldn't have that much to do with your life. Basically, me as a Floridian, my governor can set the rules here in the state of Florida, and then my mayor has my more local rules as it pertains to the little city suburb of Miami that I'm in. And the same goes for you in California. The president is not supposed to be the king. And unfortunately, we've created something relative to the media and social media that we have a cult of personality that we end up voting for, that we just kind of hand all of this power to. And I think that if the founders 250 years ago would be looking at us today, if they could get past the marvel of us all walking around with this thing in our pocket and everything else, they would probably be going, boy, you people really lost, you took your eye off the ball and you have handed so much power over to the federal government. You have centralized power in DC. You think that the president is supposed to make every decision as it relates to your life. And that's just completely wrong. We fled a king. And in a weird way, we've now created a cult of personality that sort of wants to recreate a king. That's not what I want to do, but that does seem to be the way a certain portion of the country is heading.
Well, it's weird because not only do they want to recreate a kind of a monarch, but they want to co-opt that monarchical power themselves. For instance, you said, how the states operate should be the business of the states, how the cities operate. How a doctor treats a patient should be nobody's business other than that patient and that doctor. And to me, for some reason, I've repeated this a few times, but one of the moments of insanity in the COVID excesses that stands out at me is when Joe Rogan's doctor treated Joe Rogan the way Joe Rogan and the doctor wanted to treat Joe Rogan, and everyone had an opinion about it. Now, first of all, the thing they had an opinion about was that he used ivermectin. he did all kinds of other interesting things, like give him 2 NAD infusions and all. They had no opinion about that. But because the I word showed up, they wanted to have an opinion and be able to control what that doctor did. That's a level of insanity and grandiosity that I could barely get my head around.
Well, I think part of what's happened here, and Drew, why I think you're really kind of hitting what's happening in so much of the country right now, is because the way you sort of got red-pilled as it related to COVID and medicine, I think is what so many people are seeing as it relates to politics. I think you, I don't want to speak for you, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've had a real realization over the last couple of years. The 3-letter agencies and a lot of the pharmaceutical companies perhaps are not as invested in the health of Americans as you might have thought, or as many people thought. And I think what sits next to that is many people are realizing, boy, the Department of Education, is it really educating my children or indoctrinating my children? Is the CDC really protecting us from disease, or are they actually in a bizarre way either making us sicker or not telling us the truth as it pertains to disease? So there's been a mass red pilling across the country. And I think the more and more that people realize you have some autonomy in your life, you can make some decisions for yourself. It is not up for the government to decide whether you're allowed to leave your house or not, or whether you're allowed to go to your uncle's funeral or not, or what you're going to inject into your body. These are basic human principles that our founders understood, that I think that you could trace back to biblical roots in many ways as it pertains to the sovereignty of the individual. But the more we get back to that and stop thinking that, okay, if we just elect the right guy, he's going to set it all right. Yes, some of them are better than others. I've got a particularly good guy here in Florida. But the politicians are not really the answer. The answer is us figuring out, and that's why I'm always joking with you about moving here, because I know that for years I fought an evil system in California, and I fought it hard, and then I got audited by the state 3 days after the recall, and I was like, okay, I'm out of here. It's always worth fighting the good fight, but what I have found at 47 years old is that I'm enjoying fighting for something instead of fighting against something. And that's what I'm doing here in Florida. That's a stark difference. I think you would enjoy it too, but I know everyone has their reasons why they stay and everything else. And you're all right.
So
you guys are okay.
So we're okay. So you come to me today when I'm in kind of a pensive mood. I spoke to Brett Weinstein yesterday. And that was sort of, and he's I'm sure you've spoken to him. He's an amazing guy and
many
thoughtful.
Many times, yeah.
Yeah, and he came up with a sort of a construct that I'm struggling with now. So his thing, have you heard his David and Goliath construct, where he sort of believes that all right, so there's some sort of Leviathan that has developed, he's calling Goliath, that is hiding information from the public, but is interested in its own well-being, its own growth, its own power, its own money. And that the rest of us are left as David to fight against this. I think Leviathan is probably a better word. But he thinks that the local practice of government and the practice of free speech are the answer. I'm not sure. It worries me if he's right that there is such a thing, and it's not just some sort of historical winds that blow, because they often do blow and or seem uncanny, and we're always trying to make sense of them. But if there is a Leviathan, what is it? Who is it? And what are they hiding from us? Do you have any opinion about that?
Oh man, that's the $1 million
evil
question.
laugh.
Well, first off, no, you shouldn't laugh at it. Well, I will say this: my name, I go by Dave, but my name is David, and David beat Goliath, so I think we have a chance here. And I actually mean that in a literal sense. Like, if you believe that the little guy can beat the big guy, and there is a reason that biblical story has been told thousands and thousands of times for thousands and thousands of years, because it is true. The little guy can beat the big guy. The big guy becomes too big, and the little guy is slimmer and nimbler and able to do things. So we always have a chance. As whacked out as things feel right now, humans always have a chance, and the individual always has a chance. So that's my blue pill version of this. Or that's my white pill version of this, that humanity finds a way. Jeff Goldblum, life finds a way in Jurassic Park, right? What Brett, I think, has been hitting really hard lately, and you got to remember, Brett was working at Evergreen State College in Washington. It was the most lefty college in the country, not the second most, not in the top 5. It was the progressive utopia, which of course turned into a dystopia, and he was kicked off campus because he didn't want a day where white kids couldn't come to class, and then he got called a racist for it. But what he's largely been describing is that we don't know who this, so I don't know the answer to your question, because your question is, who are these people? I don't know exactly who's behind the curtain at the moment, right? I don't know who Oz is at the moment, but we all know something is not quite right. We are not getting full information. We know we have tech companies that are coordinating with the government. I mean, Jim Jordan, congressman from Ohio, he released a report that showed the evidence, including names. Dave Rubin was on the list, by the way, of people that the government and Twitter were coordinating with to silence their posts. So that means the government of the United States infringed on my First Amendment right, my right to free speech. As Jim Jordan told me in the Capitol a couple of weeks ago, unfortunately, there's no real recourse for that. You don't get a check. Nobody says, I'm sorry. You don't get a note. The janitor won't, give you a high five. There's just nothing that you can really get from that other than hopefully to expose it and wake up people to the madness. So I don't know who's doing all of it, but what Brett has also pointed out is that these people are very good at this point, seemingly at wrecking things. They've sort of wrecked what I would say is, maybe the post-World War II liberal order of the world. And maybe it wasn't perfect. There were a lot of mistakes. Maybe it needs to be adjusted. The question is, as these people wreck things, and as you wreck people's mental state, and as you get people addicted to opioids, as RFK was talking about there, and as you open up borders, and as you allow for crime, and all of those things, well, okay, you can wreck this thing known as America. Well, what's on the other side? And his argument is, well, they're wrecking things, but he thinks, I want to make sure I'm not misquoting him, but I've heard him say he thinks that they don't have a plan for the other side, that they're just wrecking stuff sort of out of some weird Machiavellian fun, I suppose. And what does happen on the other side? I think we'd be wise to think about that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting. I because of my conversation with Brett, another thought occurred to me, which is that when people come in with progressive ideas that seem sensible and make sense, it's never really what they want. It's because they certainly don't stop there. And for the first time in my life, and I'm not a member nor a fan, nor could I have understood this until today, I literally said, oh, that's why the NRA does what they do. They tell everyone to go F themselves. They're not going to do anything because they know that as soon as I like, why do we need grenade launchers? Why do we need I don't think we need, but then I thought, oh, they learned. Yes. They learned that every time somebody comes in and comes in on privileges and rights, it's not really what they want. They really don't want the grenade launchers to go away. They want, I don't know what. I haven't figured that part out yet, but they clearly don't stop.
Well, I would say it's baked into the word itself. They are progressives. They are for progression.
They always progress.
But you always progress. But you know when you don't want to progress? If you're going down a road, let's say, I'm progressing down this road, and then hot damn, turns out the road ends and there's a big cliff. You might not want to progress over that, but it's baked in that they always want more. So the fundamental difference between, say, an old school liberal, which I think you largely are, and I certainly am, or at least was when it was a functional phrase to talk about. Liberals wanted to progress to equality. So the idea was, if you were an old school liberal, which really most Americans, I actually believe, still are, if you could shave away some of the nonsense. What do you want? You want equal opportunity. You want equal rights. You don't want discrimination. You might have your own personal religious beliefs, but you believe in sort of live and let live. So your neighbors may live a different lifestyle than you approve of, but as long as they are not doing it on your property and you're not doing it on their property, we now in a modern time, we call that more libertarianism. Liberals generally have a little more utility for the state, but without getting too academic on that, the difference between that and what the progressives want is the progressives want all of that, and then they want equity. And that is the fundamental difference. They have decided that equality is not good enough because at the end of equality, you might look around and be like, well, you know, people are different. And guess what? People are different. It's your innate human, it's your innate humanness that makes you different from everyone else. And different people are going to have different experiences as humans. They want equity, which is that everyone will end up in the same place. It's a completely dystopian, they call it utopian, but it's dystopian way of looking at the world where you ultimately will be punishing all of the people who succeed on their own merit. And that is the fundamental difference. And unfortunately, Drew, and I say this with love and respect for a guy in California, the Democrat Party has been so captivated by this set of ideas that even today, just 10 minutes before I jumped on with you, I saw that there's a California state representative right now who wants to give zero down, more interest-free loans to illegals. And it's like, well, I guess that's progression.
Yeah, there they are. Yeah, did you see where Bernie Sanders did not know that concept of equity that his party was representing was really something, right?
It should have ended his career that moment. We have played that clip on my show. It was when he was on Real Time with Bill Maher. Bill Maher gave him the biggest softball ever. All he said, what's the difference between equality and equity? And Bernie Sanders literally, he fumbled. He said, I don't know. And then at the end, he said, well, I guess I'm for equality. And it's like, dude, the thing that you ushered into America that now has been, it's much worse than what he was ushering in sort of an economic equity. But then it got racialized, It got sexualized, it got genderized, all of that stuff. But that moment that you're referring to, maybe your guys can pull it up if possible, it should have ended Bernie Sanders' career, period. That should have been played everywhere.
If you were to say it, can you imagine? Can you imagine if you said something like that? It'd be, oh my God.
True. It would be the equivalent of someone asking you, what's the difference between a cold and a heart attack, and you having no idea. That's what the equivalent was. But he had no idea what the basic ideas of socialism and how that's different from capitalism, and even his body language in it and the rest of it. It should have ended him. But by the way, the revolution will eat him, because at the end of the day, no matter how much he gave to this thing, he's an old white man who happens to be a Jew, although he's an atheist and he only trades on his Judaism to go after Israel. He's got 3 houses and he's a millionaire, and they will take him too.
So you know who has the greatest rhetorical material on equality is Abraham Lincoln. He has, both in the later parts of the later Lincoln-Douglas debates. I don't know if you know, there's in Pittsburgh, there's a World War, I think, I memorial, and on the left side of the building, they have his quote about, you know, what this country is supposed to do to level the playing field so everyone could have a crack at life from an equal starting point and raise everyone to that same level. And you mentioned, you know, one of the things that worries me is when you focus too much on equality and attack equity too much, you miss the point that the idea of equality is to raise all boats. Get everybody as far as they could possibly get. So maybe we'll approximate equity in some way. Let's get people as far as they can go. But no one is given the nod that's an idea. It's you're interested in people sort of running roughshod over other people. Here's the clip right here.
Equity and equality.
Well, equality, we talk about. I don't know what the answer to that is. Come to think of it, equality is equality of opportunity. All right? We live in a society, we want all people.
Which Dave and I are for.
Whatever color your skin is.
Equity, I think, is more guarantee of outcome, is it not?
I think so. I think that's
okay. Right. So which side do you come down on?
Equality.
Equality.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Oh boy, is he trying to avoid that one? Woo!
I mean,
yeah.
He doesn't know the basics of what he's been talking about. But I do want to address the point that you're making, which is that the best thing that a government can do, if the promise of America or the promise of a Western society is, hey, live your life, we're going to basically stay out of the way, then really the only thing the government can do is get out of the way. And yes, some people are going to be born into rich families and some people are going to be born into poor families. And guess what? That is not a guarantee of success or failure. I can only imagine how many super, super rich 15 to 18-year-olds you have seen in your practices over the years who had every opportunity, were the most privileged white kids in Malibu in the history of the world, that ended up either dead or having committed suicide or in a car accident or whatever, because life is weird. And then there's the incredible stories that we hear of a kid born with nothing who busted his ass and grew up in a horrible place and was maybe abused and all this stuff and becomes something amazing. So it is nice to believe that we could somehow jigger everything perfectly so that we'd all start exactly the same and everything else. But the problem really at the end, like the most obvious way I can describe the problem at the end, is my great-grandparents on both sides of my family were first generation here, came here with absolutely nothing. You know, the usual story of living in a Lower East Side tenement, parents dying very young, having all the jobs, all of that stuff. Then my grandparents had it a little bit better, but were still lower middle class. My parents finally made it into the middle class, moved out of Brooklyn, made it to the suburbs. So I grew up solidly middle class. I am now definitely upper middle class, let's say. My children will grow up upper middle class. Should they be punished now because they will grow up white and with a certain degree of money? Should we now punish them should we make it harder if they want to become a doctor or if they want to become a pilot or anything else? So it is a lofty goal. The progressives are very good at lofty goals, but once you peel back that very, very thin veneer, you find something really nasty underneath it. And I don't want to punish a white, or even better, I don't want to punish an Asian kid who wants to get into Harvard, who did everything right, whose family cared about education and learning and being good civil members of society. I don't want to punish that kid just because he's Asian in the name of making it more equitable for a black kid. Now, I don't want to punish the black kid either, but the truth of the reality of the world is there's only so many slots everywhere. Harvard, which you shouldn't want to send your kid to Harvard anyway, but Harvard only has so many slots. There are only so many people that can be doctors. There are only so many people that can do what we do for a living. It's just reality. But if your solution is I will punish those people because they look that way, well, you only need a mirror because you are the racist.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've noticed one thing about that people, like, I think about the earlier progressives from the 60s and 70s. They hated competition. That was the thing they really hated and disdained more than anything else, because they had all kinds of feelings about competing, and not because and then their feelings drove their ideology, which is an unfortunate part of today. And we mentioned California. We mentioned the taxes, but the overregulation is really why we have the homelessness, why we have the housing price problem we have. The government involvement in everything is creating the problems. They could uncreate the problems. They could undo them as well. I don't know if you saw this thing. It was the LA City Council was doing some sort of investigative report into we had a massive a number of catalytic converters stolen from vehicles and then resold on some sort of market. And the LA City Council's version of that was to blame Toyota for making it too easy. These are catalytic converters welded into the bottom of the car. Welded in. It can't go anywhere else. It's part of the exhaust system. It's Toyota's problem that these things are being stolen. It's a perfect model for how they think about things.
It's a perfect model, and in a weird way, it's also a racist model, because if they started arresting the people that were probably doing it, unfortunately, it would probably be mostly black youths. That is a little something to do with gang culture and a series of other things. Okay, that's just the reality. That's not racist, but because they don't want to confront those things, it's sort of like, you know, for years, the only guy on mainstream media who would talk about the shootings in Chicago, which has one of the most stringent gun laws in the entire country. Sean Hannity on Fox was the only guy who would ever talk about how many people were killed in Chicago this past weekend. And then what would happen was every other thing on CNN and MSNBC would say, look how racist he is. He's talking about all of these black people who got shot, because the thing is they were being shot by black people. So that didn't really fit the narrative. And until we get over these very base, simplistic ways of looking at things, we will never solve any of these problems. I mean, we do it on my show. It's become a running joke on my show. It's not really funny, but every Monday I'll say, well, how many people were shot in Chicago this weekend? And every weekend it's, about 50 people usually shot, somewhere between 5 and 15 killed. And they're almost all black victims, and they're almost all black shooters. Now that is not because of the color of their skin. That is not what is making people shoot people. There are other conditions, usually the things that have been ushered in by Democrats, like the welfare state and one family, one parent households, et cetera. Those are things that it's difficult and uncomfortable to talk about. But if we don't do a little bit of that and a little bit of the psychological stuff that allows people to start doing some really bad things, we're not going to solve any of these problems.
We have to take a little break. It is Dave Rubin. You can find him on X at Rubin Report, on Rumble at Rubin Report. I'm guessing, are you on Instagram and Facebook, those places too? Don't Burn This Book is the book.
Rubin Report and Rubin Report.
And that is also, of course, at locals.com. We're going to take a little break and back with more Dave Rubin. You asked for it, and the wellness company has delivered. The medical emergency kit, replete with ivermectin, prescription antibiotics, and more, continues to fly off the shelves. We keep one here at home. And there are 3 new kits you need to know about, and more are coming. The Contagion Emergency Kit was inspired by the high demand for the medical kits. In that Contagion kit, you'll find ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, budesonide, and a nebulizer. And a must for your next trip is the Travel Emergency Kit, something I made sure exactly what I give my patients is in this kit and some more. The kit includes remedies for jet lag, variety of infections, even GI ailments. Imagine your flight getting grounded anywhere, say even in the U.S., and you start getting sick. You do not want to be at the mercy of the U.S. healthcare system or any healthcare system. At home, we keep the ultimate first aid kit on hand. It has over 20 essential supplies and medications for situations when time is of the essence. Order one for your car and your go bag. Because these kits contain prescriptions, your purchase includes a telemedicine consultation as well as an instruction manual. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off. That is drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all your orders. I'm very excited about these kits. Go to drdrew.com/TWC. Are you one of the millions of American women and men dealing with premature hair thinning and hair loss? Or maybe you're scared about inheriting that thinning look because it runs in your family? Start 2024 with a real solution that delivers results without the harsh side effects or unwanted chemicals and no need for prescription. Provia uses a safe natural ingredient, Procapil, to effectively target the 3 main causes of premature hair thinning and hair loss. By supporting healthy scalp circulation, the delivery of nourishing nutrients, and healthy hair follicle anchoring to your scalp, Provia guarantees more hair on your head than in the shower or on your comb. Right now, new customers save over 50% plus free shipping. Every introductory package includes a full 60-day supply of Provia serum for daily use, plus the Provia Super Concentrate for faster, more noticeable results. Don't wait. Order now to save an extra 10% and get free shipping at proviahair.com/Drew. That's PROVIAHAIR, proviahair.com/DREW. And before we bring Dave back, I want to remind you this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you had unlimited free time, do you even know what you do with it? Sometimes we get buried in our work and what we're doing. We don't think about why we do it or what we really want to be doing. Therapy can help you uncover what matters to you so you can do more of it. It can help you learn how to work for yourself instead of against yourself. And therapy isn't just for people who've experienced major trauma. Of course, BetterHelp's therapists can help you learn positive coping skills to benefit your everyday life and grow into the best version of yourself. Integrate who you are and apply it. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, you might give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, to fit into your schedule. No longer stigma, any sort of excuse for you because it's all online, no waiting room, no nothing. You just fill out a short questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy and do more of it with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/DRDRE. It's betterhelp.com/Dr. Drew Rumble. DRDREWRUMBLE. BetterHelp.com/Dr. Drew Rumble to get 10% off your first month. One more time, BetterHelp, HELP.com/Dr. Drew Rumble. All right, let's bring Dave Rubin back into the house. Yeah. So Dave, there we go. So again, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. We're gonna squeeze a few more minutes of your time out of you. I want to go back to Brett Weinstein because he and I had similar training. We think similarly. He and I talked about evolutionary biology and all these things that were so axiomatic to us. We also were both trained as ecologists, and how there was an ecology movement probably before you were born. And it was, people forget, before the climate thing, there was a ecology move. We called it ecology. And we got everything wrong. We predicted everything wrong. And we were so confident. We were confident there was an ice age. We were confident there was going to be a famine. We were confident that rivers and lakes were going to be dead. We were going to kill them with phosphates. But they were just one thing after another. We got it all wrong. Because science progressed, humans came up with solutions, and yet here we go again with another religious movement that is based in some science. But no, this is back to what we were talking about earlier about how people don't seem to want what they say they want. Because if you really wanted to solve the problem, you would be interested in nuclear energy, you would be interested in carbon capture, you'd be interested in planting more trees. But it's not. It really is not what they're interested in. It feels to me. You look at things very politically, and I tend to look at things very psychologically. It feels like there's been some sort of trend in our personality construct that has us wounded and wanting to complain about that and act that out and project all of our own aggression and shortcomings onto other people, and then do good. And then not stop there, because that's really not what we want. After all, we want to just complain, and we want to imprint ourselves on other people. What do you say to that?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, so much of what we all do now is virtue signaling. It's something I try not to do. I try not to just complain about these things or show people how great I am when it comes to these issues. I try to do things. So I saw a problem with big tech, and that's of course why I ended up starting Locals, which was a couple of years of my life that I spent building this tech company. People thought I was just doing my show. That was a full-time job, but doing that, ultimately merging with Rumble. But as it relates to climate specifically, I would say there's almost now a secondary problem that I'm starting to think is bigger than the problem that you're addressing with the climate, which is that we have been lied to about so many things over these last couple of years, as we've already talked about, whether it's COVID, whether it's, January 6th, or Brett Kavanaugh is a serial rapist, or the Covington kids are racist, or Jesse Smollett got lynched, the Russia collusion, blah, all the stuff, right? We've been lied to about so much that now I think what's happening is, even for people who would be inclined to perhaps do something about climate or be a little more concerned, or in their own life just recycle a bit more or whatever, I think there's a whole bunch of people that are basically like, you know what, F this entire thing. I want nothing to do with it either way. So when you talk about nuclear energy or carbon credits or some of the things that perhaps we could do if you believe that this is an issue, I think now there's a movement, largely on the right, obviously, of people that are just like, you know what, screw all of this. You people have lied about everything. You used to tell us, as you just referenced a moment ago, there were articles in Time magazine in 1976 about the great cooling that was coming. You guys have lied about so much. Forget all this. I'm living my life. That's it. And I don't necessarily think that's the best thing either, because of course there are ecological disasters. There are real things to think about. Whether that is actually connected to man-made climate change is a separate issue, but being I would say, responsible citizen is important. And I think a certain amount of people are checking out of that.
Yeah, the lied to part. You put a little clip out of something I said on your show a couple of weeks ago, where I said, it's so shocking to me that I've gotten to a point where I cannot believe anything that is said in mainstream media. I mean, I feel like some are a little more egregious than others, but it's very unusual that somebody just reports the facts. And when they do report the facts, I have to go check it out, because I can't assume that what they're reporting is just the facts. And it really is an extraordinary change.
Well, look, the fact that clip, no, it is, but the fact that clip of you went so viral as it did, and Elon Musk tweeted it out, and it was catching fire, was because people like seeing a bit of a mea culpa. That's not exactly what you did there, because you weren't at fault for something, but you were basically saying, boy, I've had to reevaluate the things that I believed in light of the craziness of these last couple of years. And people appreciate a little bit of humility. I have not gotten all of these things right over the last couple of years. I think I've generally been in the right direction. I've certainly screwed up when it comes to political predictions. I haven't had a great track record of that, or at least gotten the people that I've wanted to get elected. But I think generally I'm in the right direction on ideas, but we all get things wrong, of course. So you doing that, I think what that is, and I think it has particular weight when it comes from someone like you, because as we've talked about before, you are like sort of like, you come from mainstream and now you're a digital guy. So you have the let's say the de facto cred of someone that comes from that world. And the mea culpa or the humility never comes out of anyone from that world, right? You never see anyone that gets everything wrong on CNN all the time. Rachel Maddow telling us that vaccines will stop COVID. She had no idea what she was talking about, but she had no problem saying it. All the people who lied about Russia collusion, all this stuff. Nobody ever apologizes. Nobody ever gets fired. It never happens. So I think the reason that that clip took off, it's not only because you were saying something true, but it's also because you're seen in both worlds and we never see it from the other side or from that world. And if we did, in a weird way, I'm giving them the secret here, but in a weird way, if they would just admit that they're not right about everything, that not everyone who counters them is racist, that they screwed up some of these stories, that some of these things have not been exactly as they reported, there would be less reason to be watching guys like us in the digital space. But I don't have a problem giving that secret away because I know they ain't going to take the bait.
Which is weird. I mean, I look for every opportunity to apologize and correct course and talk about where I've been wrong. I mean, I went, another thing that went viral with me, I apologized to Naomi Wolf about something where I was really embarrassed and was shocked at myself she was completely reporting how women after the vaccine were having all these menstrual irregularities. And I just like, Naomi, come on, menstrual irregularities. That's just, come on now. It's like, it happens all the time. I give medications of all sorts. People get menstrual. And I was very dismissive. And that is sexist and pathetic of me. Turns out there's some evidence that something was going on in the ovaries and the uterine lining of women that we ought to pay at least a little attention to. And women are miserable because of it. And my dismissing was just inexcusable. And I apologized to her. I fell on my sword. And of course you should do that. And whenever I can, I try to do that. There's I should make notes of this stuff I would need to apologize about. Well, but back to the mainstream thing. Go ahead.
Well, look, if you were, okay, whether it was Rachel Maddow with all of that stuff, or it's anyone on CNN with Russia collusion or whatever, but imagine even if Joe Biden himself, that clip that I'm sure you've played many times, I play it on my show still all the time, from I think it was June of 2021, where he said, if you get the vaccine, you will not get nor transmit COVID. Oh, yeah. Now, either he was lying. I actually won't take the position that he was lying. I think he was handed information. He reads what's off the card, and that's what he was told. So maybe someone at the CDC was lying, or maybe someone at Pfizer or something was lying. But either he was lying or they just got it wrong. It's some combination of that, whatever. But why has there never been one moment in one interview, and I get it that Biden is very protected right now and there are no real interviews with him, but think how easy it would be for somebody to say, Mr. President, in June of 21, you said blah, blah, blah. Did you know that that was actually not true? Who gave you that information? I know none of this will ever happen, but just think of the healing that will do. That's why I like that you started today's show with the Robert F. Kennedy clip, because so much of what he's trying to do is just heal some of this stuff. And the thing is that if we get Trump, who did Operation Warp Speed and who obviously, at least from where I sit, was better than Biden on COVID because he wasn't at least for mandates. But whether we get Trump or Biden, who was for mandates and was for firing doctors and nurses and everything else, it's like we will never get a comeuppance about any of this stuff. I think DeSantis clearly would have done it. I think RFK could potentially do it. And if we don't, then guess what, guys? It's just going to happen again. They will bring it. They'll have disease X, as the World Economic Forum calls it. And they'll say, you know what? You guys were right. Okay, we overplayed our hand a little bit on COVID and the vaccines didn't quite work and it wasn't as deadly as we thought. But this is the big one. It's 20 times more virulent and you better stay in your houses. No. And guess what? People are going to say, thank you, sir. May I have another?
Yeah. Right. I agree. Trump has an opportunity to apologize too. He could say, I was very proud of Operation Warp Speed, but it had a significant benefit in Alpha and Delta. I didn't foresee what they would do with the vaccines once this virus became a cold. And I apologize for that. And I should have anticipated. Also, he was a big advocate for lockdowns. He should apologize for that. Not that he did it, but that he didn't anticipate the excesses that developed on the heels of it. And
but he did do it. He did do it.
Yeah.
He did do it.
Yes, he did.
2 weeks before he left office, he was sending a letter to DeSantis to reclose Florida. So he did do it. He did give more power to the states than the Democrats did, but you're absolutely right. Now, That's what I've been trying to push Trump on, because obviously in terms of who I'm voting for, I lean more towards Trump than Biden. There's no way in hell I'm voting for Biden. You're not even voting for Biden if he's even there at that point. Nobody even knows what you're actually or who you're actually voting for. So obviously I lean more towards Trump, and I did vote for Trump last time. However, what you just said right there is exactly, from my estimation, what Trump should do. Trump has an incredible opportunity right now to get the disaffected liberals. The ones that don't have complete Trump derangement syndrome, but they've really woken up to what's going on with the left. They've seen a lot of really nasty stuff, particularly since October 7th. They don't want anything to do with the Democrat Party anymore, but they have some aversion to Trump. Well, now imagine if Trump got up there and said, you know what, guys, I'm a little older now. I got the nomination really easy. I took out everybody. Maybe I did do a couple things. I know it's not really within his character, and asking him to do something like that is probably beyond the pale. But I think it would go a long way to getting, it's particularly white middle-class women who seem to be breaking from the Democrats right now. But they have an aversion to Trump, and he has to figure out how to mend that. I hope he can.
Last topic that I've been sort of, again, I'm white pilling, black pilling, I don't know what you call it anymore, just struggling with, is the echoes of history are all over the place for me. And one that I have not really, I speak a lot about French Revolution, things like that, and Alexis de Tocqueville, and I just keep bringing these things up over and over again because I'm preoccupied with them. But the other thing that's preoccupied me that I've not talked much about is technology and leaps forward in technology and the profoundly disruptive consequences. And I just keep thinking about the Gutenberg Bible and about how the printing press really resulted in, the Protestants being able to read the Bible, and that caused 150 years of deadly wars. Catholics saying, you can't do that, you're going to destroy humanity, we have to stop you from doing so. And even all the way to the American Revolution, Thomas Paine was able to print a pamphlet that significantly impacted on the planning of a revolution, or the winds of the revolution. Is really so much of the, let's call it what it is, craziness that we're seeing these days, just the result of this technological leap, the digital world of which we're a part of, and social media,
yes. And
people are just not dealing with it well? Is it all just that? Is that the Goliath? Is that the Goliath, the Leviathan that Brett Weinstein is talking about?
Well, that's an interesting concept, because I largely agree that it is. And then the question is, okay, what if nobody's really directing it? So it's like, okay, we look behind the curtain, and what we see behind the curtain is, oh, you got the internet. You got the sum totality of all knowledge and every idea, and it was algorithmically charged. And you could do anything at any time with this freaking thing, and see anything, and fight with anything, and fight with anyone, and all of this stuff. What if it actually wasn't that, oh, it's the wizard? Well, now we know what's going on here. It's the freaking wizard. We can figure it out. But what if actually it was just us behind that thing? We just pulled it back, and then holy cow, it was a mirror, and it was like, damn, well, that's kind of empowering in a weird way. But I would say largely the answer to your question is yes. All of the stuff that we're dealing with right now is because this thing was put in our pocket, and we didn't know what the hell it was. Anyone that watched the Social Network, the Mark Zuckerberg, founder story for Facebook, he was a kid who wanted to find a girl to get laid. That's it. And he ended up with the most awesome force man has ever known, basically. That's an awful lot. Many of these people that got into tech, they did not intend to have this power. And with great power comes great responsibility. That's at least what Uncle Ben said in Spider-Man. And that's kind of where we're at right now. I think in a weird way, there was no way not to get where we are. We had to learn all these lessons on the fly, because all of these lessons, the lessons of how we should be careful with technology or be careful with AI or robots. I mean, The Matrix, Terminator, Total Recall. You could go through the list of dystopian sci-fi movies, which are all my favorite movies. And they were all warning about these things. AI, the movie AI, or I, Robot, Isaac Asimov. You could watch all of these. Minority Report. We're now having pre-crime in Canada. There are so many things happening right now that were the things of science fiction that have now become the things of reality. But it's one that you see Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie, and you're like, well, that can't happen to us. And then next thing you know, your decision making is left on this thing. What you're eating is left on this thing. Your social credit score is left on this thing. Could you be kicked out of the system and then put into Squid Game? I don't know. Does that sound so crazy 20 years from now? So yes, it is the battle between man and machine, or technology and technology and belief, something to that effect. And I would say again, Drew, David beat Goliath. So I think many of us that understand that will be okay, but many of us will be lost in this technological war.
Well, we are using David and Goliath as an allegory, and whether you believe the Bible was inspired divinely or actually dictated divinely, or is merely a series of allegorical wisdoms that persist through human history, the tree of knowledge, the apple in the tree of knowledge, has a bit of a echo in this frame we put together here. Interesting, and I mean this with peace and love. I'm not meaning to be sexist about this, but when I look around at some of the behavior of some of the women, particularly white women with the megaphone screaming at cops, I was like, what happened to them? What's going on? Eve was the first one to bite at the apple. Maybe they're the harbinger of this, what knowledge does. I don't know. I don't mean it in any kind of way that I'm trying to conclude something, but we ignore these stories, even if we believe they're just allegories. We ignore them at our peril because they've persisted through human history for a reason. I want to finish last thoughts and find Rubin Report everywhere. Last thoughts, David? Anything from your end before I wrap it up?
Sorry. No, my last thought is
you killed him.
You took me out with your good stuff, Drew. I didn't know, I was speechless. No, my last thoughts are that you just echoed much of what Jordan Peterson talks about, who's obviously a good friend of both of ours. And Jordan, I think, has brought back, whether you believe them literally or figuratively or as an allegory or whatever, Jordan has brought back ancient beliefs that helped build civilizations and brought them into the modern world. And the only way that this technological adolescence will evolve into something that will be somewhat congruent with anything that any of us have ever known about humanity is if we hold on to some of those ideas. And that tension, you might describe it, you could describe it as the tension between liberalism and conservatism would be a very simplistic way of saying it. But the tension between modernity and the old ideas. Not everyone in the old days was dumb just because they grew up in an older time. And if we can take some of their good stuff as we head into this unknown universe, that is the only chance we can do it. And I guess that will be up to us to decide.
And in the meantime, follow and watch the Rubin Report and read his book, Don't Burn This Book. And hopefully we'll see you for dinner in May when we come down to Southern Florida.
Yeah.
Yes, well, I have no plans to come to California, so it's May in Florida or bust.
Well, if you do, don't drive a car with a catalytic converter. So, all right, Dave, thank you so much. And say hi to Dave, the other Dave, for us. Appreciate it. And we are going to, all right, man, take care. He has the cutest kids of all time. Susan and I visited him in Florida.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. Thoughts, Susan, before was I too...
No, it was great. I'm sorry I had to go pay the tree trimmer.
Was there too much allegorical
Who just
excess?
took down our ficus, so the neighbors are going to get to see me
fine.
sunbathe.
It's fine. We need.
I hate cutting trees.
I know, it's fine. We need it. They take over. You have to, and unless you want to.
I know,
do it
but I
every
can
year.
see everything up there now.
I know,
They have a
fine.
good vantage point.
That's fine.
You're going to have to talk quietly to Adam out there.
That could be true.
They might record you and
that is true.
send it to TMZ.
All right. So we're going to bring in our next guest. Let me tell you a little about Karen. You can follow her at Karen Kingsbury, just like it sounds, on Twitter, KarenKingsbury.com. The book is Someone Like You. It is a film. And Karen, I believe, funded it herself. She's, of course, a New York Times bestselling author, and she wrote the screenplay and produced the film. She has the Baxter family books, also being developed in a TV series, adjunct professor of writing at Liberty University. Please welcome Karen Kingsbury.
Hello there.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, so this is a little bit more grounded conversation than Dave and I just had. We were up in the clouds somewhere. But tell me about the book and how the story of how you made it into a movie. I know there's a lot of adventure there, so please tell us.
Yeah, Someone Like You is a love story, and it's really about two twin sisters who were separated at the petri dish as embryos. And one grows up to be London, and the other one grows up to be Andy. She's kept in cryopreservation for 4 years, so she's 4 years younger, but neither sister knows about the other. So it's a love story where the best friend of London loses her. She has a tragedy and then finds out there's another embryo and goes on a search for that sibling and never meant to fall in love.
You know, these kinds of stories, like Dave and I were just talking about the challenges of modern technology. I mean, this is areas that a lot of people are affected by in ways that they don't even know yet, right? I'm sure you explored sort of the spiritual / concrete effects of these things. I have noticed it in the domain of everybody getting their ancestry and 23andMe checked and finding out that it's not who am I, but literally what are all these secrets that I didn't know about my family and where I come from, and why didn't I know these things? And a lot of things are coming to bear that are deeply human, but sort of need to be answered and addressed. Do you agree with me?
I really do. I mean, I often say that truly, like, science has raised questions only God can answer. And there's just a million ways to look at it. And that's why this even came to me as I saw this woman at an event that I was speaking at. She had triplets and they were all adopted embryos. I had no idea that you could adopt an embryo. And there are more than 500,000 embryos on ice waiting for adoption. So yeah, these sort of things that, like, they raised a ton of questions. And yes, looking into your ancestry is the same kind of thing where, oh my goodness, who knew that somebody was a sperm donor and then now you have 4 siblings in a state you didn't even know, was a thing.
I kind of look at it a little more sort of psychologically and interpersonally, in the sense that things happen to people where they make choices that have profound consequences, and they want to remember Don Draper. He's like, it just didn't happen. He was the sort of, to me, he's the sort of model for this kind of thinking. And I wouldn't call him a healthy or a good person by any means. Interesting character, but not a good person. And a lot of people do things that they don't understand are related to all sorts of echoes in their family systems, and maybe even the historical past or wars or God knows what. And we don't think about it and we don't bring it forward. And yet it is here to come to bear on us.
Yeah, Someone Like You, when we decided to make that one as the first kind of Karen Kingsbury production film, it was because there's so much, the complexities of these two families. Neither told their daughter about the other. So the one didn't know she was IVF, which is something, that makes sense. You would tell your kids, but she didn't know. She didn't know there could be another sibling.
The secrets are the thing. This is, to me, the secrets are, other than the technology being, and everything that it sort of makes us struggle with, but the secrets are the other part that I think we need to get real about.
Yeah, Someone Like You. I mean, that was it. It's like right now, I feel like we're living in a time when culture's pretty divided over a lot of different things. And one thing I'm hearing, screenings that people go and see Someone Like You and they say, I was healed while I was watching that movie. Like, now I feel like I could call my sister and maybe try again to have a relationship, or whatever the case might be, a parent, a spouse. I mean, there's a lot of division and a lot of healing needed. And I think Someone Like You, I think it's coming out right at the right time.
Boy, that's extraordinary. If more than a couple of people can be affected that way by a creative project, that is, I imagine that would be the ultimate compliment, the ultimate goal of your work. Tell us a little bit about the project, the turning it into a movie. I'm guessing that was a fascinating sort of project as well.
It was. I mean, there have been a number of TV shows or movies made on my books, and I'm thankful for each of them, but it never was quite like, for me, God puts a movie in my heart and then I write the story. And we call it life-changing fiction because I do deal with issues. And people do often write in and say, well, that changed my life or it saved my life. So we decided to work with this one, but we had the only way to get to make the decisions to actually create a movie that looks like the one that was on my heart when it started was to pay for it ourselves. And we had no studios, no investors. And I remember when we made the first purchase, there's this beautiful glass house in the movie. It opens in theaters on April 2nd. So people will see that. But It's literally all glass walls, and it's on the edge of precipice of Smith Lake in Alabama. And when we purchased the 5 days there, it was like $8,000, but it was non-refundable. I was like, well, here we go. We're making this happen. And my
You're
husband,
in.
we're in. My husband put his hands on my shoulders and he just said, honey, if we have to sell everything, I believe in you.
Wow. That's,
Yeah.
again, that's a very powerful moment in this project. So it's going to come out nationwide April 2nd? Is it a major theatrical release? Is that the initial rollout?
Yes, it is.
And how do people, is there a website that people can look to figure out whether or not there's something near them?
Yeah, definitely. Someonelikeyou.movie is the best website. You can see the trailer and they can get tickets already now. Yeah, it opens in 1,800 screens April 2nd, nationwide and in Canada. And, we think it'll take off from there. We have great expectations for this to be a real outlier. It's funny, we got a rating of PG, and like, who has a love story that's so deep? This love story will make you cry and lean in and really it stays with you. It stays with me now. I've seen it 100 times, and I just can't get enough. And I cry when there's a scene at the end where the moms meet, and the one mom is coming to basically bring home her daughter, who once she found out the secret that she'd been adopted as an embryo, she's pretty mad. And she actually takes off and goes to meet these biological parents she never knew. And, it just creates this moment of, at the end when she forgives and the parents come, then these two moms meet. And there's a moment where the one who adopted the embryo says, I never thought that you would give her to me a second time. And it's just like all the tears, like the love of the biological mom to send her home where she really belongs. And then the other one to say this, and that's the scene there. You can see it. It's just gripping, and people cry and they feel their walls fall down. And that's, I think, what story has the power to do, even in culturally relevant issues.
Well, you say culturally relevant issues. I think it's become I'm sure you've thought about this, acute with the Alabama court ruling about frozen embryos being I believe, I don't know the details, but my understanding is they're being given the status of children in the eyes of the law. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I thought it's so interesting because, it raises a lot more complicated issues. Like, IVF is a personal decision that people make. And then you have these little embryos. I think it's beautiful. We actually have a One Chance Foundation. We give grants to people who adopt, and we have given grants to people who adopt embryos, so international, domestic, or embryos. But the ruling is going to be complicated for people because now you raise some questions about whether they can even do IVF, like who is handling the embryos, all these things. And I think, again, these are questions that each family has to make. They're decisions each family has to make. And I think that, at the end of the day, it's about the love of a child. And if that's something that people can get their mind around, I think it would be a lot clearer.
And, the theme for today's show has clearly been the impact of technology on humanity, both electronic, media and biological sciences. And we are contending with a lot these days. And so I guess we should maybe be a little kinder with ourselves. It's no wonder we're struggling on so many levels. Karen, where again can people get more information about the film?
Someonelikeyou.movie. And there's at someonelikeyou.movie, there's the trailer, and we have shareable pieces, and we have some clips from the movie as well, and you can buy tickets there.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Anything else you want to say about all your other books, and anything that's becoming hitting again, as they say? Anything that's becoming more relevant to our present moment that you've written in the past?
I find that happens quite right. I write a lot about relationships and issues that they go through, and technology, like you said. It's funny, we did a conversation around the dinner table recently, and we said, what's the one invention that you would do away with if you could go back in time? As my, adult kids are all holding their phones, and all of them said we wouldn't have the smartphone would never have been invented. And that kind of is a play in some of my books as well. But right now, I mean, I feel like it's, fascinating that someone like you, our movie comes out after funding it, paying for it ourselves, and having, our hand in every aspect of it. And then this ruling comes down. It just, I think it's making people lean in and say, well, what is embryo adoption, and what are the ramifications, and how do we cover those with love and compassion?
I have to
Agreed. Karen Kingsbury.
I have to
Caleb,
say something, because Karen she's way too humble to mention this, but if you do a little bit of research on Karen, she has sold over 25 million copies of her books. That's a pretty massive accomplishment. I read that. I was so impressed. That's amazing. So the audience needs to go check these out. These are very popular books.
Oh, thank you very much. That's
Congrats.
very sweet. Appreciate that.
Congratulations, Karen. You can follow Karen at KarenKingsbury.com. You can follow her on the usual places at Karen Kingsbury. And Karen, thank you so much. Look forward to the film.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Dr. Dew. We'll talk again sometime.
I would hope so. Thank you so much.
God bless you.
And for everyone else, let's look at what's coming up here. Let's see, where are we? Wednesday today. So tomorrow, Dr. Kelly Victor, I think, comes back. Yes, Kelly Victor with Kevin Bass.
Everybody's wanting to know. She's coming back tomorrow.
Coming back tomorrow, and it'll be great to see her. And Kevin was a guy that was condemning anybody that took issue with the excesses of COVID, like lockdowns, things like that. And when he didn't carry when he questioned a couple of the conventions and was severely attacked, he thought, wait a minute, something's wrong here. And he flipped all the way to the other side and became very outspoken against some of the things that we would now see as the excesses of COVID, and is a PhD, is a scientist, was in medical school, and was kicked out of medical school for speaking up. So there'll be a perfect person to talk to with Kelly in the house. Corolla, Fela, Christina Anderson.
We have a Fela on Fela.
Yeah,
he's getting
not that day.
He has a media tour on Wednesday, so we're going to rebook somebody there.
Okay.
Literally
He's
just
way
found
too
out, yeah.
popular.
Is a
Like just now.
fail for Fela.
But he's still coming back. Don't worry.
And I thought you wanted to do Corolla in studio, but we're going to be from New York next week.
Yeah,
so
I know. He'll come in studios after that.
Okay.
It was just really great to
Christine Anderson, we're getting her back. She, of course, is the European Union MP who has been very outspoken about impingements on civil liberties. Wait, don't take that. Mike Benz is coming in here, who is Mike Benz, who's been extraordinary in terms of helping people understand the impact of the intelligence agencies and what they've been up to. David Cartlin.
I think it's an early show on that day, 21st.
Yes, on the 14th, because she's in Switzerland or something. And Greg Lukianoff, he is from FIRE. He's an amazing advocate for free speech. And he's another one that has been red-pilled, white-pilled. I don't know what we call it anymore even. So everybody stay with us. We appreciate you all being here. We appreciate our guest today. We appreciate, let me just look at you guys on the restream.
It's pouring rain outside right now.
I
They
know.
just finished trimming the trees, and
Just in time.
yeah, I was out there and it started sprinkling, and
Now I can
I'm
hear it
still really
pouring.
upset about the neighbors being able to see
Stop
everything.
Stop it.
I was like, did my husband tell you to do that?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
You are an exhibitionist, I guess. So.
Well, that's it.
Well, at least we have sun now. We can get a tan.
That's right. I'm looking at the chats of the Rumble rants, and also over on the Twitter Spaces. I'm just checking everybody before I sign off.
I have to paint the picture for what Drew does. He sits on the porch in the morning with his coffee, ranting with Adam. You can hear him through the house, even though he's out on the porch with the door shut. So the neighbors built a tree house over his balcony. So I don't know. Should be fun.
Well, thanks for giving them that idea. They can just get their phone out, which we've been criticizing all of us thus far today.
No, I guess they're
record
nice.
what
I
we're
guess
saying.
I told the tree guy to go tell him to put curtains in.
Oh, that's very funny. We have curtains, so we're fine. All right, everybody.
We don't have curtains over our balcony.
Well, not a balcony, but I'm not worried about anything. Appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow at 3:00, our usual time, Pacific time, correct? I'm hoping that's not anything I'm not saying anything out of turn.
And Dr. Kelly Victory's back tomorrow.
Excellent. We'll see you then.
Yes, she lives.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help. The parallel economy has empowered us to care for our health, well-being, as well as longevity. Likewise, for us pet parents who now have a place to go when it comes to keeping the family dogs, cats, even horses in the best shape possible. As a dog dad, I'm thrilled to be working with Pet Club 24/7, a company founded by two guys who lost dogs to serious conditions, including cancer. Pet Club 24/7 has an incredible array of products, including a line of supplements for humans, such as the Inforce Plus Coreolus Versicolor and Inforce Coreolus Versicolor with reishi. My friend and colleague, Christina Ferrari, a cancer survivor herself, swears by it.
When I was diagnosed, the doctor in the emergency room told me, "You have 2 years to live."
Oh boy.
Along with the stem cell, I took these. I have been in remission for 8 years now.
For dogs, Mush Puppy treats are a fan favorite. Rex, oh boy. Oh, he came right. Oh, there he is. They are also made with the Coreolus versicolor mushroom, which supports their immune system according to hundreds of clinical studies. Here's Kristen Ludlow, National Vice President.
That strain does matter. We do have the most potent strain, and we also extract it in a proprietary way. And that's why we've been having such wonderful experiences with these products.
Mush Puppies are made here in the U.S. There are no fillers. It's non-addicting. Your dog can't accidentally overdose. Go to drdrew.com/petclub247 for a discount off the list price. That is drdrew.com, PETCLUB 247, Pet Club 247.